chat with you. We have a lot to talk about, and it's Illinois is a fun place that's always in the news lately. I just wrote about how Chicago has these ghost schools where basically there's no kids there, but they have employees, and they're spending $100,000 a kid almost, and it's just crazy. So we'll get into that a little bit. We'll get into for listeners hopping on right now, we have Darren Bailey. We're super excited to have him today. He's the Republican nominee for governor in Illinois, taking on the big bad J.B. Pritzker, who we'll get into this in a second, but I believe he said he supported school choice in 2022 when he was running last time. And now a lot of people, there's a lot of eyes on him following through with those remarks or not. So yeah, let's get into it. I think we've waited enough. So thank you guys all so much for jumping on. This is Corey DeAngelis, the school choice evangelist, and we're joined by Darren Bailey. He's the Republican nominee for governor in the great state of Illinois. So thanks for jumping on with us, Darren.
Well, thanks for this amazing opportunity, Corey. And, we all know that the future of our country, and especially the future of Illinois, lies in the education of our children. So Cindy and I are very passionate about that. A lot of people don't realize I spent 17 years on our local school board. And then right after that, Cindy and I went on to open Full Armor Christian Academy, which now has 2 locations. So we are very passionate about education and about our future and our children.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on school choice? I think we met, Darren, correctly if I'm wrong, at some sort of candidate forum several years back. And you might have been a state senator at the time.
I was.
And so if you can get into a little bit about, your views on school choice, parental rights in general.
Well, so then after, like I said, after serving on the school board, that's kind of, I've worked from the ground up a lot like yourself. And we started a Christian school. And then when I got a little frustrated about all the tax increases, I primaried my sitting state representative. So I served a term in the state house as a representative, a term as a state senator. And in 2020, with the lockdown, shutting down our schools, businesses, churches, I sued J.B. Pritzker. I'm a farmer. I'm not an attorney, but I sued J.B. Pritzker. I won that lawsuit. And that's kind of how I and a good friend, State Rep Blaine Wellhauer, we began going around the state with some others and telling everybody, get your doors open. And here in Illinois, during that time, homeschooling and private education really began to take off because public education, it's failing our children, and it's not because of the wonderful people who are serving as teachers and administrators and school board members. It's because of the heavy hand of government and just continued regulation. So first and foremost, as governor, I intend to just get the government out of our schools and let local school boards figure out how they want to educate their children. And then secondly, yes, a school choice is a must. Competition is good. The biggest number one problem here in Illinois to public education is our teachers union. And what started off as, protecting good teachers to maybe hostile boards or whatever, that's totally changed. The teachers union today has no interest in educating our children. The only interest that they have is pursuing their agenda, and their own funding here in Illinois approves that. So we are a staunch school choice that is on our agenda. It's one of my 3 pillars as running. So
and did the Chicago Teachers Union have something to do with getting rid of the Illinois Invest in Kids Act? Did you talk a little bit about how Illinois used to have a school choice program, and right. 2023 they got rid of it?
Yes.
And could you walk through how? I wrote about this at the Wall Street Journal. J.B. Pritzker said that if a bill got to his desk, he would save that program. And when he was running in 2022, he said that that he supported the tax credit scholarship. Do you believe any of that rhetoric? To me, he didn't follow through with that. And it seems like he knew the bill was never going to get to his desk to save that program. So could you talk a little bit about that program and kind of how that worked out?
Well, he knew it wasn't going to get to his desk because with his money, he can make sure that it doesn't get to his desk. That's one thing I've discovered. Many people who are elected to public service, instead of keeping their word, instead of representing you through government, many people have one interest, that's getting reelected. So with J.B. Pritzker's money, there's where that threat stands. So right now, today, if there is one bright spot in Illinois, and interestingly enough, just last week, J.B. Pritzker told the people of Illinois that, hey, if you don't like it, just go to another state. Just that bluntly. So, but the one bright spot is the freedom of homeschooling and private education. However, the last several years, that has come under attack. They want to bring DCFS into homes for quarterly checkups. They want to regulate what curriculum is being taught. So yes, for our mainly Invest in Kids impacted all of Illinois, but it really helped where the failure is the worst, and that is Cook County and the Chicago public school system. And you wonder, well, why? Because this is simply a tax deductible. Corporations, people with money, give a donation, and they're allowed to take that off of their taxes, and they know that that's going to help further someone's education who's drowning in public education. But the reality is, the pressure that's put on the legislators by the teachers union is to get rid of homeschooling, get rid of private education so that more children can attend public school, so that more teachers will be hired so they can bolster what they have. And then also the federal education initiative, President Trump's initiative, JB, there's $8 billion to be had for education in Illinois that would most of that of which is earmarked for school choice and this Invest in Kids. But J.B. Pritzker refuses to cooperate and sign on to that. Instead, he turns this rhetoric around, accusing President Trump of withholding that money. And there's nothing that could be further from the truth. J.B. Pritzker is using that as a political agenda for a presidential run in 2028. But by the grace of God and a lot of hard work, isn't going to happen because we will stop him in November. So
you would opt into the President Trump school choice program?
Absolutely. I would opt in regardless of who the president is. If that money was available and it went to education and here in Illinois, we have the highest property taxes of any state in the nation. And what happens is the state legislature, and especially over the last 8 years, these things called unfunded mandates, the legislature tells schools, you have to do this. And oh, by the way, we're not going to help you with that. We're not going to fund it. Or they come out with a 3-year program that's awesome, and schools they get it implemented, they hire the teachers, and by then you can't let the teachers go. And then the state pulls the funding back. And so leaving school districts, dangling. So school districts, some of them will go out to the public and say, well, we're shy on money here, and we're going to have to cut teachers. We're going to have to cut programs. Community, what do you want to do? Well, everybody wants, the best education for their children, and they approve that. And slowly but steadily, that's all made up with local property taxes. That's the way education is funded here across the board in Illinois. So it has got to a breaking point. It's got to a breaking point where the people are saying enough is enough. We cannot afford this. We literally, there are stories and instances of people paying more in property taxes literally than their mortgage. You get your home paid off and then you turn around and you rent it from the government. That's not right. And that has to change. And school choice, helping, giving vouchers, giving tax credits to people that want to, families that want to homeschool their children, families that want to send their children to alternative forms of education. That's a must for Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how they came after the homeschoolers this past session. They introduced that bill. I think there was 50,000 people who signed up against it, and they still in committee passed it along party lines. All the Democrats voted for this bill to regulate home education in Illinois. And yeah, I think you're right. The property taxes are all going towards the school system. And there's no better example of how money is not the solution to all of our problems than Chicago. I mean, Chicago, the latest data that I saw showed $30,000 a kid. They got 80 public schools with not a single kid proficient in math. So 0% math proficiency. A lot of them have 0% reading proficiency. And the latest thing that I wrote about in Chicago was these ghost schools where one of them is 97% empty, Darren. It was built for 1,000 kids, yet they only have 27 students there and 28 adults, and they're spending nearly $100,000 a kid. I mean, what gives? You'd think they'd be knocking it out of the park, but they also have not a single child proficient in math or reading. It's what do you think Chicago or Illinois should be doing about these empty schools? I mean, people are leaving and they're just hiring more adults. And, at some point you're just funding empty buildings. I think the 145 schools in Chicago alone are over 50% empty. I mean, at some point we got to figure out what to do with those as well.
Right, 50% empty with students, but 100% staffed with teachers and administration. That's our problem. So I was the Republican nominee for governor 4 years ago, and won a primary, taking a 60% of the vote in a 6-way race. So, but the problem here in Illinois is we have these midterms, and people fail. I think it's kind of that way across the United States. People are failing to show up and vote. They're frustrated. They're angry, and that's their form of rebellion, is not voting. So unfortunately, 4 years ago, I had a terribly low turnout in the Cook County in Chicago, but even across the state, we've got about a 43% turnout altogether. So it just things didn't work. Things are a lot different now from 4 years ago. Our friends in Chicago, property taxes in the last 3 years have increased tenfold. They've been expensive all over the state, but they really haven't gotten hit to the point that they've gotten hit recently. So people are beginning to wake up. Utility costs, just everything across the board. So I've changed. I made some mistakes 4 years ago. So now, as we get back into Cook County and Chicago, we've got a lot of people that are willing to listen. And to your point of these, a lot of private schools across Illinois, parochial schools, for instance, they're educating children for anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 a student.
Mm-hmm.
That money subsidized by churches and donations. And this is the way it is with Cindy and I at our school. We're doing it for $6,000 a student. And it's interesting because from time to time, when these students, maybe they reach high school age, and if a school doesn't have sports, but they want to play sports, well, then they might opt in to go back into public school. I'm going to say 95% of the time, these children test in 2 to 3 grades higher. Yet when they come to private schooling as a third grader or fourth grader, when parents are realizing the school system's failing, they're usually 1 and 2 years behind. So this situation with these empty schools, it's real. So that 4 years ago, I showcased a school in Cook County, and there was a school that was built for 1,300 students, and it only had 200 students in it, fully staffed. Yet 4 blocks down the road, there was a brand new school being built because it was a district line. So just that's the power of the teachers union. Here in Illinois, the teachers unions bring in about $12 million of the dues and fees. About $1.5 million is spent on administration. About another $2 million is spent on what the teachers union is really supposed to be about, fighting grievances, and that the remaining $8 million is spent towards the lobby, buying off, number one, Democrats to not sign on to these bills, or paying and supporting Republicans who are quiet and will not push back and fight. So, J.B. Pritzker, so across the state, outside of Cook County, 70%, and this is by the state's own standards, Illinois State Board of Education has this on their site, 70% of our children who graduate every year cannot read, write, and do math at grade level. That's an average. There's some schools out there doing really good, and there's some schools out there doing worse than that. However, as a standard with CPS, Chicago Public Schools, it's 90% rate of children that cannot read, write, and do math at grade level. There's no truancy. There's these mechanisms are in place, but no one's following up. And yet, about a month ago, when J.B. Pritzker did his State of the State address, this is how blind this man is and how arrogant he is. In his state, he literally, in his address, he literally stated that we are graduating. Our graduation rates are higher than they've ever been. Well, they are, because here in Illinois, you can't flunk anyone, you can't hold anyone back anymore. We're just pushing everybody out the door, and these students who and yet, you know, they're not equipped for life, and yet then industry, factories, electricians, people can't find the adequate workforce because our children aren't ready. So that probably is one of the biggest outlier of problems here in Illinois. But here's the deal. Here's another bright spot in Illinois. The governor has the broadest range of authority, really, more so than any other governor in the nation, have full use of executive orders. The governor controls the purse strings. It took me a while to figure that out, but when I served for 17 years on the school board, every year we were being shorted 200,000, 300,000 in a small school district. Well, the community wanted to keep the services, so we kept, you know, working up property taxes to match what they needed. And that's the game that's being played by government. When the governor pulls and you know, J.B. Pritzker wants to spend $2.5 billion taking care of illegal immigrants in Chicago in 2025. Well, that money's got to be made up somewhere. The governor also is responsible for filling at-will positions of about 2,300 positions, every agency. So the Department of Illinois State Board of Education, the governor handpicks the people that serve on that board, as well as the chair. The governor picks the trustees to our university. So there is a path to getting education back on track here in Illinois.
What do you think about the Mississippi reforms that have turned into this so-called Mississippi miracle, where I think Tate Reeves, governor out there in Mississippi, he was quoted recently saying, you know, calling out Gavin Newsom of California, that the black kids in Mississippi now are 2.5 times as likely as black children in California to read proficiently. So they implemented these reforms, like, you know, making sure that a child is reading by the end of 3rd grade, so that instead of just pushing them through the system, and using phonics-based instruction as opposed to this whole language learning that the liberals have been pushing for a very long time. What about those kind of tweaks to the public school system? What do you think about implementing some of those in Illinois?
Well, that's the way it was when I went to school. I learned phonics. I mean, and you're right. All this was pulled away here in 2027 in January. All Illinois high schools must provide 2 forms of foreign language. Now that sounds great, but there's an unfunded mandate. You know, there's a lot of students out there that just, you know, vocational classes, those for the most part, funding for that is gone. Kids aren't learning to cook and home ec. They're not learning to work with their hands and building things out of wood or working on small engines. So yes, I think that's, as governor of Illinois, I fully intend on working with states out there that are getting it right and have these wonderful ideas. It's a no-brainer that, especially here in Illinois, I mean, literally when it comes to public education, everything is wrong. We have sex education indoctrination in our classrooms. There's tampons in the boys' bathrooms. I mean, it's nonsense. Again, unfunded mandates. The state tells the schools this is what you must do, and it's everything except teaching our kids to read, to write, to be able to think outside of the box. And I cannot wait to visit with the governor of Mississippi and other states and begin to bring these ideas to Illinois.
Yeah, we live in laboratories of democracy, and what's really interesting on Trump's school choice program, which is a federal tax credit, there's actually a Democrat who's come along on the issue named Jared Polis out of Colorado. So there's been 28 states have opted in, but only one Democrat governor has said yes, and that was Jared Polis. And he said that the decision was a no-brainer. He said that he would be crazy not to do it. So you would think some more Democrats would come along too. It doesn't touch a single dollar of local public school funding. It doesn't, if anything, if you don't opt in, you're probably going to subsidize other states, because anybody can donate, but you can only receive the scholarships if your governor says yes. So I think JB Pritzker is kind of in a bind right now because he's trying to juggle this obvious policy decision with the teachers unions. And so I want to hit on the teachers unions right now. Chicago, I just saw a poll that just came out showing that over time, they've gone from a positive favorability rating to now they're like at a net negative 26 favorability. So the majority of Chicago voters even are saying that they have an unfavorable view of the Chicago Teachers Union by like, 52% unfavorable and then like 26% saying favorable. Why do you think that might be?
Well, Corey, first of all, that's why it's such an honor, and I'm so happy about being on your show here today, is getting the message out from Illinois, because Illinois has been checked off for so long. We've had, the last couple of Republican governors failed. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. So the Democrat governors, they're willing to, dole money out at will. So people think, well, if at least I'm getting something out of this. Go back to the story real quick about winning the primary. 4 years ago, Cindy and I showed up in Aspen, Colorado to the Republican Governors Association. For about 15 minutes, we were superstars because everybody knew about the money that was spent against me. And they knew that, the percentage of win that I took in a 6-way race. But that 15 minutes quickly ended with yeah, but you're from Illinois. And Illinois just gets written off sometimes like New York and New Jersey and Colorado and California do. Things are different today. Chicago is indeed facing this. There's a shortage of 1,600 police officers in Chicago, and many 911 calls don't get answered. The ones that do have about an hour response rate. The property taxes, the expenses are too high. Children, the truancy rate, these children who are getting in trouble and they find out, why aren't you in school? So there's an awakening taking place. And it wasn't as bad 4 years ago as it is today. So we've got some wonderful groups in Chicago who are now working as well to get this awareness out. Cindy and I will be making a Chicago our home for the next 7 months until the November 3rd election, and we'll be touring. We'll be inside of out, education schools that are working, and we'll be showcasing these public schools that are not working, but it's power blinds. And I believe that's the same way with JB Pritzker. I got elected as a state rep the same year in 2019 that he became governor. And I'll never forget when we were at the hotel before inauguration. I went down to the coffee shop to get Cindy a coffee, and it was 5:30 in the morning, and there he was sitting reading the newspaper. And I just went over and introduced myself to him, and we chatted. And for a brief moment, I told him why I was running, and I couldn't wait to work with him. And oh gosh, he had all the same interests that I did. And I found out in the first month that certainly wasn't true. And so the money blinds, he had an agenda, and he's trying to fulfill this agenda of a socialistic economy or socialistic society so he can run for president in 28. And so it is with the teachers unions. They this machine that has to be constantly fed, and they're doing things as they've always done. So I think one key thing is, as far as Chicago waking up, is my ability serving as 4 years in the General Assembly. About half of the legislators that are Democrats are still there, and even though we don't agree on things, there's a respect, because I had respect for them, they had respect for me. We're in Illinois, they're gonna we're probably going to be in the minority, if not the super minority still, the Republicans. But if I can get out there and educate people and let people know that it can be different and it should be different. Again, my phrase as we first started conversing about politicians and re-election, that's going to be a big part of my administration, is communicating and educating the people and putting them in contact with their legislators and saying it doesn't have to be this way. And I think, and that's the roadmap. It's going to take a lot of work, but that's why I'm a Southern Illinois farmer is able to be here, running for governor in Illinois, because I put in that work. I put in the process of educating, talking, and communicating with the people. And that's what's happened in the last 3 years in Chicago. There's an awakening, and now they're fed up because they realize finally how bad it actually is.
And I think the Chicago Teachers Union in particular has gone so far left that they've basically stepped on a rake at this point. With the election results in the primaries a couple weeks ago, I saw that the CTU endorsed 13 candidates in contested races, many Democrats, and they lost those primary elections in most of those cases. And if you did the quick math on it, it turned out that they squandered almost $400,000 in people's dues that are working in the school system that went towards losing candidates. That, coupled with the fact that many of the Democrats didn't even put the CTU endorsement on their website. It seems like it's become more of a toxic association than something that you'd want to brag about. And so I think change is coming. What do you have to say to teachers who are kind of looking at both candidates and saying, I want to make sure that the governor has my back too? And can you kind of differentiate what, like the fire that you bring towards the union leadership versus, which, by the way, their own members are sued them recently with the help of the Liberty Justice Center, because for 5 years in a row, they have required financial audits they're supposed to give their members, and the union wasn't doing it. And so now there's congressional investigations happening with regards to the Chicago Teachers Union. So could you get into a little bit about your views on teachers and how we could help them in the public school system while also holding the union bosses accountable?
That's exactly right. That's awesome. So Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, he is the product of the Chicago Teachers Union. He came from that. They financed him. He is the product, and we can look at the massive failure that he has been. So part of this frustration is because of that as well. As we do our stump speeches, as we go out and visit people, I've always been very, very clear to our teachers that I believe being a teacher, especially a teacher in a public school, I mean, that's a mission field. There's no more nobler profession than to be a teacher and to bring to bring up our children. When I first started serving in 1995 on our school board, I was asked to fill a vacancy. And when I did that, I had this agenda that I'm going to make sure that government doesn't control the minds of our children. Well, in 1995, that wasn't necessarily happening like it is today. I quickly found out that the most important thing was the people that we hire, because those are the people that are around our children, 8+ hours a day. And that's what it's all about. So just helping the teachers to know and understand that, hey, I'm going to free you to be able to teach and educate like you want to do. No more of this nonsense, no more of this woke ideology. We're going to get back to the basics, as you suggested, of phonics and the real math that actually works and adds up, and actual history, true history, and get the kids back into thinking, out of the box with science, and get them active again in physical education. Just like I said, the way things were, you and I over the years, we've seen how it's supposed to work, and it's not working that way. So there are alternative forms of, for teachers who are concerned about their the pensions that they pay into. There are alternatives. There are Christian alternatives that they do not have to be a member of the teachers union, even in order to have adequate representation. So educating the teachers and administration, school bus drivers, janitors, that guys, it can be better, and it will be better, and you can be proud of your job. And we will have people once again standing in line wanting to be a school teacher for public education, but all the while making sure that we 100% protect anyone who wants to homeschool their children, that we 100% any school that offers an alternative private education approach, that if you're paying money into taxes, those tax dollars should follow you. If you're not satisfied with your school, your form of local education, that you have an option to put that money where you believe, the parent, empowering the parent to be able to decide where they want their child and what kind of an education they want their child to receive.
So to get to go on to that topic of parental rights, I have a video that I posted late last night, not knowing people were going to pick it up. I figured some people might want to look at it, but it's really picking up steam. It's actually trending on X right now. I want to get your response. I'll play the audio for listeners. you might have heard it already, but let's listen from her own words. She said this, an Idaho Democrat. What do you think about that? There are kids when they're in the classroom.
Those are dangerous. Those are dangerous words, and those are the people that should not be in office, and they should not be in our classrooms. So, and that's what's wrong with education. That mindset, it's all in marketing. So as the teachers union figure out that things, parents are becoming dissatisfied that public education is beginning to cost too much. Someone comes up with some kind of a marketing brand. So this poor lady fell into that, obviously. And, when I was my first year as a state representative was the first year that homeschooling came under attack in a big while, and a state rep from the Metro East just simply introduced a bill that would require, if you homeschooled, that DCF would have to come into your house and do an inspection and a certification once a quarter, 4 times a year. I, as being passionate and being on the education committee, that was part of the beginnings of my getting the message out to the people. Put that on the social media and began to push it. She introduced the bill on Tuesday. I gave the lady's name. I gave her office number in Springfield because we were in session all week. By Friday, she pulled it. She pulled it because people all over the state began to call in. So that's what we've got to do as parents. That's what we've got to do as people. You find out who your state representative is, find out who your state senator is, and the people that are going to be watching this program, I'm sure they're just like I was 15 years ago. And I'm sure they're just like many of the people that I talk to when I go to town halls all across this state. I'll ask people, who's your state representative? I won't put them on the spot, or I'll ask them who your state senator is. Only 10% of the people have an idea. 90% of the people will spit out a name, and it's usually the congressperson. It's sometimes not even the congressperson that is actually representing them, but it is at that state level. We love to watch President Trump, and we love to see what's going on in DC, in the House, and in the Senate. We have got to get engaged locally. Show up at a public school board. It doesn't matter if you're a homeschool parent, if your tax dollars, you're invested. Show up at a public school board meeting a couple times a year, and just listen. Don't have to be radical. Just listen, because when you walk in and take a seat, every board member is going to look up and they're going to think, "What are you doing here?" So let's start turning up the heat on our people and letting them know that we are not satisfied, and getting a hold of your state representatives and your state senators, having a very congenial conversation. No text, no letters, a phone call to their office, to their home office, and to their state office, and just let them know that basically I'm putting you on notice, and I expect something different. And I guarantee you, if they get enough of those calls, they will wake up and they will begin to change.
So I've been seeing a lot of stories pop up all across the nation with boys playing in girls' sports in different states. In California in particular, there was a Supreme Court case that recently came out in the favor of parents, where they were keeping parents in the dark. If a child was confused about their gender at school, the policy at the state level was to not tell the parents, and because they were trying to label parents as abusers, and it was dangerous to have parents as part of the conversations with their own children. What's going on in Illinois, and is there something to be done there?
Sadly, 4 years ago, that form of a bill, I mean, every egregious bill right now that you can dream up actually exists in Illinois. So 4 years ago, I was in the Senate. I fought it hard. But a 12-year-old student can come to school and make any decision that child wants to make. They can change their sex. If they're pregnant, they can have an abortion. The law states that there is no parental a notification. And that is, I mean, that is one of the most egregious laws that exist in the state right now. Again, just taking back so the parental rights, unfortunately, in Illinois are minimal. DCFS can come in and snatch a child out of the house for any known reason. I hear these stories. I see these stories continued. I fought hard. I was able to turn some of it around, serving as a state legislature. And I cannot wait as governor to rebuild these programs. And again, it's just like our education process. It's all about people, putting the right people in the right positions, so that common sense rules again. But yeah, we have the sex education curriculum that is taught. It is mandated. It must be taught in every school, and by the grace of God, there are some schools that skirt around it and water it down. But the books that are used, I mean, they're pornographic. They're just it's sickening what is J.B. Pritzker has prioritized to put in our classrooms.
I remember in 2021 there was a great gubernatorial election out of Virginia where Glenn Youngkin basically pointed out all this crap that was going on in the Virginia public schools, and there was a great parent awakening, especially after the Democrat who everybody thought he was going to win was Terry McAuliffe. And he said, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. Do you see any parallel between kind of your difference between you and J.B. Pritzker and kind of the Glenn Youngkin, Terry McAuliffe dynamic?
100%. And I pray that same awakening, that's all it's got to take, is an awakening for people to show up and vote. 8 million people in Illinois who are eligible to vote. Only 70% of them are registered. So in 2022, only 43% of that 70%, so essentially 30% of eligible voters are all that showed up to the polls to voting. So the reason is it's real. They're fed up with the government, and like, again, it's my vote doesn't count. It's rigged, Chicago, and I'm just, the old phrase that we hear, too big to rig. Let's you show up, get one last chance. Show up, get me elected, and I can show you how we can begin to change. So no, it's 100% the exact same parallel with Governor Youngkin and what's taking place in Illinois. And again, and like I said, that's my three pillars. The only three things I'm focusing on is affordability, safety, and education. And that gives me the time and ability to, when we're talking with press, when we're talking with people, to, within those three pillars, to address exactly what we're addressing today. And too many times parents are shocked. So COVID was really the awakening of that, whenever they began to do, after in 2021, as you suggested, whenever online classes began to show up, and parents were actually kind of watching what their kids were doing on the computer screen, and they were appalled at it. So unfortunately, in Illinois, we had another year for our primary, and it just the movement kind of fizzled. So.
Yeah, I had pulled up the map. I don't have the screen open right now, but the 2022 results, it looked like you won like basically every county except like Chicago. And so, yeah, I mean, you're in striking distance. And so we've gotten a little bit over our kind of anticipated 30 minutes. So what's your closing message to parents, people of Chicago, people of Illinois? And what's your closing message?
Corey, I want to make sure everyone understands and believes that we are within striking distance. We went through a brutal primary. There were people convinced, or tried to convince people that, well, I can't win again, and any Republican can win if we have the voter turnout. The difference between me and any Republican is the experience and the fight that I have in me, and that's what people know and understand. So we have polling that in the next few weeks we're going to be releasing, and it is amazing that this race is winnable. Period. We've got to have people show up to vote. So anyone out there, the people you go to church with, the people that you sit at the ball games with, the people that within your family, your children's groups. Make sure they are registered to vote. And then starting October 1st, hold their hand and either get them to vote early, get them to show up to the polls. And my website's baileyforillinois.com. I need your support. So help us financially to continue getting this messaging out. And then I also have another website that's awesome. It's called Blueprint for Illinois. There you will see our plan of attack. And if you want to have some fun, scroll down to the bottom and you can track some of the money, or you can track all of the money that's being spent by the state of Illinois and seeing where it's going. And I promise you, you will be shocked.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Darren, for joining us. Thanks for all the listeners to check out Darren Bailey. He is the Republican nominee for governor of Illinois, taking on J.B. Pritzker. He's obviously a warrior for educational freedom. He's a fierce fighter for parental rights across America, but particularly in Illinois. So thanks, Darren, for coming on, and wish you much luck.
God bless you, Corey, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Darren.